Hello, everybody, and welcome to another conversation with William Whitecrow. Today's topic of conversation is going to be ETs and UFOs. And with that, my first question is going to be, Whitecrow, do you feel that these ETs are real? And if you do, where do they come from?
Well, I do feel that they're real. There's too much evidence right now. We can get into that, later. But the fact is, where do they come from? Gosh, everywhere. Orion system, Vega system, Zeta Reticuli. We seem to have, and this is using NASA's information and large VLAs that they have, satellites, radio telescopes, and everything. We received several messages or uh, broadcasts, shall we say, whether they were aimed at us or not. That isn't the point. That have been intelligently designed, Arecibo, we received some there. The WOW signal in the 70s. Also, and earlier than that, there was one that they believed that came from the Andromeda galaxy somewhere out there. And they say they deciphered it, and they were talking about how their planet was messed up. They had to get off. They were actually asking for help. Now, I try to stay away from any of the conspiracy stuff and talk about reality, but some things get buried. They don't want you to know about out there. So we'll touch on some of them things. But where do they come from? Definitely Orion system, and the Doga tribes. We have many other uh, Aboriginal tribes across all continents of the planet to talk about different star systems where these beings come from. We see it carved in stone, hieroglyphics, painted, what I mean, on walls, ancient petroglyphs and things of this nature that talk about these beings coming from out there. Now, it doesn't matter whether we believe it's dimensional time travel or space travel. The fact is, they're there. And the fact is, they do talk about these particular star systems that I mentioned. The Pleiades, the Orions, the Vegans, Zeta Reticuli, things of this nature. And it seems that there's, 4 to 5 that we deal with, on a regular basis. A lot of people say there's a lot more. We're only going to deal with the ones right now that seem to be interacting with our society more so than any others.
So, being as they are interacting with our society, why do you think they are here?
I think they're here the same reason we want to go out in space. Maybe their planet, they all of them have to come to a point in technology where they can be go to space, be space bound, not Earth bound, but go out into space, check out other planets, and they did probably the same thing we're doing, sending out probes and satellites and all this type of stuff. And once you start seeing what's out there, you want to go out there, yourself, and that's what we need to do, our own species. And once we get to that type of technology, we also realize, come to a very stark reality, planets only last so long. Civilizations only last so long. And so in order for the human species or their species to survive, they have to become spacefaring civilizations. And just because they're highly technically advanced and highly intelligent and everything doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be good or bad. They could be in between. They could be predators. They could be very benevolent for our society, or the other way around.
Well, they could be both, like you say.
They could be like us, just
here.
like our society. Our society has many different aspects, many different characters and personalities and psychologies and everything. But the one thing is for sure, when they all get together and there's shortages of things, we fall into the locus effect that I always talk about, and we become very dangerous. And so I would assume other species would do the same thing. Why are they here? Also, I think they have come to the point in technology and science where they can reproduce themselves, basically with no sex by cloning, by creating new aspects of themselves or taking aspects of themselves and manipulating the genes and genome structure to mix with something else. And that's what a lot of, people think is happening. Breeding project to keep themselves alive. But there's also enhancements on us. So if they release hybrids into our society, maybe even those hybrids don't know they're hybrids yet, because we're only looking at part of our DNA. Where they say they're junk DNA. Now they know that they're starting to open some of that junk DNA, which is it's not junk DNA, and realizing, wait a minute, there's more to us than we thought here. Those are hidden DNAs, and I believe that they'll open, those DNA structures when the time is ready, or we've advanced to another point.
And those DNAs will probably show that there are hybrids.
I think we already know that, according to ancient histories and stuff, but that goes into the proof thing.
And that's what's going to be my next question is proof.
Well, the proof goes. Go ahead.
What kind of proof is there that there are UFOs, that there are ETs, that these aren't all hoaxes
there can't be
made
hoaxes.
up?
Impossible. It's all written in stone. Every single culture there ever has been. We're seeing them, the video evidence, and we're just going to look at modern day now. The video evidence and the types of people that are seeing them, presidents, pilots, cops, other people, simple people, ranchers and people don't have no reason to lie, or come up with a story because they're not going to make anything monetarily of it, and that's the only reason to come up with a hoax, unless you're just out there trying to play games. But the fact is, the proof is always been there. Visitations at the space shuttle, it seems all of our space programs, all of our astronauts that went up there have all reported bogies or Santas or, something, got code names for it. Or they'll go to their, off the main channel, go to their med channel, which they talk to NASA with. So they got a couple of different channels, a couple of different secure channels, and tell them, we got a UFO, we got a bogey out here, and they're able to move themselves about. So they're intelligently designed and intelligently being moved, so that's the way there is. There's so much proof now. And we haven't even touched on the abductions and things like that, on that aspect of proof, and we have our own personal experiences, all of us with them, at one time or other, whether it's a sighting or whether it's an interaction, so you just can't throw away all this stuff. Like Project Blue Book was made just to make people think that the Air Force is doing something about it. In reality, it was just a cover story to try to, hoax their way out or explain their way out of. It can't be a UFO; it's a weather anomaly, or something of that nature.
And they've been here for a long time.
They've been here longer than we have. Facts are, that's it. We talk about our scriptures and everything, and we were talking about some of that aspect of the scriptures, and so not only the Bible, but we'll use the Bible because it's a new kid on the block. The Bible is, it's a combination of stories from all of the cultures before, and put together very well. But the book of Genesis and stuff like this, the book of Ezekiel basically talks about craft, coming down and thunder and lightning and fire and the thundering voice, PA systems. We can describe those. And those people back then did not understand the technology they were seeing. Right. So they had to describe it in the means that they knew how. Thunder and lightning and fire and roar and this and that and brass and gold. And, well, don't we use a lot of gold shielding and stuff like that for our spacecraft? And our masks, our visors on the spacecraft are a gold color, and tinted and everything because of the sun and other things, so this makes sense to me. Wheels within wheels and wings of the craft, they precede this whole technology, this craft, and the individual sitting in it as God in its chariot, so there's just so much of that. But also in the ancient books, they talk about basically our planet. This is how I know they've been here a long time. We're talking about terraforming. In the book of Genesis talks about that, a step-by-step process. And what's really interesting about this is the separation of the firmament from the firmament. They came upon Earth at the perfect time, when everything was just primal and pristine, and it wasn't molting anymore and all this, but it was there without form. Of course, they're talking about a molting state. So that tells you that they've been together here a really long time. Since the beginning of our planet. They watched our system, then they came in when the planet was right. They possibly caused a chain reaction in our atmosphere. If they're a million years advanced before us, who knows what they can do. But if they caused a chain reaction in the atmosphere, the separation of the firmament from the firmament, then we had an ocean and we had clouds and rain, and then all of a sudden there was one continent among the waters. That talks about Pangea, scientifically proven. I mean, so they're really getting in depth here. And then when they're bringing, seeds, burying seeds and this and that, they start talking about at the basic level. Bringing things in that's going to support the next level of things they bring in and put on the planet. And that grows for 1,000 years. We want to talk about a time schedule here. Time schedule we're looking at is a biblical time schedule because we're going to talk based there on time. And 1 year of God's time, 1 day of God's time was 1,000 years of man's time. So it took the 7 days to make 6 days to make everything. On the seventh day, God rested. But if you look on those 7 days, starting from number 1, number 2, and 3, each successive thing that was put there was to support the next thing. The first thing was put there to support the next level. And the next thing that was put there was to support the next level. And that's exactly how it was done. And on the seventh day, God rested. Well, if I was a species that just terraformed a planet, and each day is 1,000 years, when you put something there, you give it 1,000 years to grow. Then the next thing you put there, 1,000 years. Next thing you put there. Of course, there'll always be little mutations off of those things as time goes by, from sun, the elements, radiations, things of that nature. But then after you're done, you're going to kick back and you're going to watch as a scientist or whatever, and watch everything, make sure that it's working fine. Once you know it's working fine, you can go to the next planet or whatever and start building too, So that's where we're talking about the ancient astronauts and things like that, as being our gods and things, because personally I look at God as being something different. This is something that's in all things a life force, something that we commune with inside of our soul, our spirits, So I just said that to make the difference about what we're talking about here. God and the Great Spirit and the trees and in the wind and in everything. We're talking about something that was physical here, that came down and left their mark among society and our religions and even the forms of our government.
With our government. So good chance are they are working with the governments, and they are probably giving him ideas on how things should be and so on.
Well, I think in the beginning, you look at the ancient Sumerian account, Babylonians, and many others, they talk about what they taught us. They taught us belief systems. They taught us our forms, how government should be ran. Whether they are working with the government right now with all the chaos in the world, if they're a very negative aspect, they want power control, sure, it would make perfect sense. They've been here since before we were here. They had a hand in our development, more than likely, according to scriptural reference and ancient text and other things that have been found out there, that really leans towards that way. It's like, if you had a murder case and there was nothing but circumstantial evidence, the murderer in this case, showing all this ancient evidence and stuff like that, would be tried 10 times over as a mass murderer, and they would be executed. There's just that much evidence out there that shows that someone, somehow was here. As far as interacting with our governments, there are stories that talk about several governments that have talked to these extraterrestrials and made deals with them. U.S. being one, we'll talk about that. In the 1970s, they had a meeting with these extraterrestrials, and they said, listen here, what we're going to do is we want technology. They were talking about what they're going to do. And they said, okay, you can keep up your abductions. We just want the names of everybody you're taking, not necessarily what you're doing and everything like that. If you replace them, fine. If you don't, well, we still need their names and everything. In exchange, you give us technologies. So I think they give us a lot of technologies and stuff that during the beginning. But after a period of time, it is said that they reneged on the deal, the extraterrestrials, this particular one sect of extraterrestrials, and decided we don't need your permission. We've been doing this for 1,000 years anyway. But it seemed like there was a trying to work within one another's societies. You know what I mean? So they could do something without being shot at, or we shooting at them, or them shooting at us, or whatever. The aggressive tendencies that we both seem to have.
Right. So we've had a lot of technologies, and it's like all of a sudden we just got tons of technology in the industrial age and all of that.
And that's
Do you
true.
think a lot of that came from them?
Well, I think that there is technologies out there that have definitely come from them. I base my feelings and my research on a few things here. The first thing that I look at is the evolution of everything on this planet compared to us. We've evolved 1,000 times faster than anything else on this planet during our time span. Even the ape's been here as long as we have been. They haven't developed. They're just getting to the point now where they're talking and understanding computers. And I showed you those videos and everything on chimpanzees, photographic memories, things of this. So they're evolving. We're seeing this happen. So why couldn't it happen way back then? But also because of the ancient stories we have and hieroglyphs and all of the ancient creation myths talk about us being created. So that kind of makes sense. That would match our evolutionary process of evolving faster than other things. If they came in, they download us, or they genetically manipulate us by these abductions, a little here and a little there throughout the generations, then maybe we become smarter, able to use more of our brains. Maybe they turn on some of those little genetic switches in our junk DNA, as our scientists say. So I think that that's a very high possibility. Therefore, in all reality, we're all hybrids.
Okay, yeah, that would make sense.
If we stop and look at it from that point of view. Yeah.
So why do you think they haven't disclosed themselves to us?
Would you? How many humans out there got guns? How many humans are the first thing they're going to do is shoot if they don't understand? Looking at our governments right now, they're warring. They're getting ready for another major world war, possibly. The interesting thing that these craft seem to have flown over, and we talked about this before, all of our nuclear bases, including Russia's, China's, everybody's, and turn their nuclear weapons on and off, and literally attacked some of these missiles when they were being tested. Shot up in the sky. We've seen the footage of it. And there's definitely something going on. If they're trying to shoot at these missiles and everything, and turning them on and off, they have a vested interest here. That means to me, I'm going to look at this in a larger sense. They have a vested interest in the planet. If we start wiping it out, we're going to affect what they got going on here too. If we start shooting nukes at each other, So I think that they've already disclosed themselves, and really, we're thinking on human terms. We're not thinking on their terms. They don't have to think like we do. How come you haven't disclosed yourself? And I'm saying that facetiously as an alien, as a human to an alien. And the alien goes, "Why? You guys are violent. Look at what you do to each other." And maybe they have tried to work with our government. We don't know. And some of them possibly still are. We have to look at that and acknowledge that. According to some of the secret programs the government has going that we know about that most people don't. I think a majority of them aren't disclosing themselves because I think, in effect, they already have. The sightings, the abductions, everything that's going on. Come on, people. It's wake up. The disclosure's been made for a long, long time. And we're waiting for our government to turn around and say it just so we can say, "See, told you so." We're doing this for the wrong reason. We're looking at the whole picture for the wrong reason, really.
Yeah. Well, they have given us a lot of things. I know there's a lot of stuff going on in the air.
I think some of our new technology, the touch board, Roswell, we know that was a craft. They had touch technology. All we did was reverse a lot of things. But in turn, by reversing a lot of things, it did put our natural abilities as humans and tinkering, inventing, and stuff like this to work to come up with other technologies based on those technologies. So it isn't just us finding technologies, reverse engineering them. We're enhancing on some of those things, I believe, as well.
Right. Now, do you think, this is just kind of an off-the-wall question, but do you think that that through some of those technologies and the fact that we know some of the basics of some of these technologies and the insane advancement we've gotten with some of these, do you think that there are some people that have been actually literally downloaded with information from them and on how to develop these technologies and use them?
Basically, you're saying that kind of like they're taken and then they're downloaded information in their mind,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a Johnny Mnemonic through the
Yeah,
memory in
kind
the
of,
past
sort of,
kind of thing?
yeah.
Yeah, and I'll tell you why I think that, because we're doing it. You know, Manchurian candidate type situations.
Mm-hmm.
It is
Mm-hmm.
very well known in the deep dark circles of special operations and the CIA and everything that you can make a human being do anything. You can condition an individual to do anything you want them to through certain types of techniques. Now, for assassinations, I mean, you look at a lot of these crazy things happening out there nowadays, and people doing mass killings, and then they do, I did that. What happened? You
Mm-hmm.
know, uh, not saying that our government or this and that's doing that, or any type of agencies are doing that to create chaos so they can create more control factors over us. But, who knows? But the fact of the matter is this, to answer your question, definitely, there's no doubt about it. Why? We do it. They have agendas just as well as we do. So if you can download information to people here to help you, if you're a benevolent society, you don't have to download people. You can tell them, we're going to do this, give you this information, and they'll do it. And maybe they do it the download wise to help you out. It's a quicker way to learn instead of using a book, or something like that. Also, you got to look at the negative aspect of that. We have apparatuses now, technologies that one person could be standing on a sidewalk where there's 50 people, and you can aim, and it's like an LRAD, at this individual, and only that one individual is going to hear in their mind what the operator is saying. We've already seen the proof of that.
Mm-hmm.
The technology is there, and so it makes all the more sense. You could have a special operations going. You could beam this information to a particular individual there, and over time, and we know that our CIA and our government's done mass tests with hallucinogenics, biological weapons, all kinds of tests in our normal societies and our cities. So, yeah, makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay, one thing, another thing I'm thinking about is a lot of these craft that we see. They're pretty amazing. A lot of the crafts that just move really fast and just disappear practically as soon as you see them, and they just zoom away. How are they doing that?
I think when you see like we see a flash, Mark McCandlish and I talk, and I me, I know a lot of the people in this field, top people, and I talk to them, but some things are common sense. And Mark McCandlish and I was talking about this last week and everything about what we see this up in the sky, and you'll see a flash, and then you might see another flash later on. Some satellites are tumbling, so you're going to get a flash, but in many cases, you can take your night vision infrared like we use and look up there, and you can normally through night vision or something, other technology, we can always see those satellites. Some of these flashes, I believe they're jumping. You'll have a craft, and then it's going to jump. Could be hyperspace, could be dimensional, could be wormhole. But you'll see that flash, and they jump. So that's one thing. How they move, I've talked to Mark about this too, and others, and a couple other physicists. And to be honest with you, my personal feeling is the only way that they could do something like this and even go to light speed, and personally, me, I believe we can travel faster than light. I totally believe that. We've already proved we can make wormholes with the new super collider they have overseas.
And I think they just proved that recently.
They just proved it. That's what I'm talking about. So the technology is there. So if you've got another civilization that's a million years advanced or 1,000 years advanced than us, they're popping in and out of wormholes or, dimensional holes or whatever at will now. Okay, their propulsion, I think, wherever there is a charge, that means in space too, and especially around planets, that they have the capability of creating a field around their craft that's a, shall we say, a neutral buoyancy, neutral in the magnetic field and energy field of things. But the craft that they're in, so we're going to take a tennis ball, okay? Now this is the craft you're in, a tennis ball. And everything you do is inside that tennis ball. Then you take that tennis ball and you put it inside of a basketball, which is much bigger. The basketball is your field of energy around you that can be neutral. And what I mean by that is you can match the polarities of any direction and anywhere and keep yourself neutrally balanced right there to hover. Okay?
Okay.
Now, I'm just going to say up and down, use these terms, and left and right. So anybody out there that's listening to this can understand it. If you want to move right, okay, and the field is of the earth field or gravitational field or magnetic field of that planet or atmosphere is positive, then you can create a negative field at the front of your basketball sphere field, okay, and at the other opposite end on your left side, you can create a positive field in your basketball field right there because the atmosphere is going to be positive there. So you're going to move forward.
It's going to push it away.
And you can keep your up and down fields neutral right where they are. If you want to leave the ground, and most planetary bodies are negatively charged, okay, your atmosphere is more positively charged, you add more negative to the bottom part of your basketball field, okay, so it's going to move you forward and up. Now, if you have computer systems and things that can do this automatically, and a power plant, and Mark and I have talked about this power plant, it deals with mercury and things of this nature. We can talk about that later on. It's not necessary right now. But you can control your craft in any direction, in any speed you want to go, because you're already inside of a field that is neutral to this third dimension reality. I know it's kind of hard for people to understand, but if you use the tennis ball and the basketball, at least you know one fits inside another. In this basketball, you can change the field in any direction at any time, so you can go any direction you want instantaneously. But the good thing is, on this field on the inside that you're in, the tennis ball field, you don't feel the mass movement.
Gotcha.
You're neutral. So if you make a 90-degree turn at 7,000 miles an hour, you're not going to feel it. That's physics. It's possible in the field of physics. It's getting quite deep. We can't go into that because I lose a lot of people.
Right.
But basically, that's how they travel. And they can create a wormhole, pop in, pop out. Speed is not a problem when they reach a third-dimensional place like ours.
Right.
Because they can use the energy of the planet, recharge from the energy of the planet, to move at the speeds we watch them move in.
So when you think and you think of that kind of stuff, and you think of that kind of stuff being shown to primitive people, the early people that were here, like in the beginning of the planet,
They'd go, gods.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You turn on, take a big lighter and a flashlight, you're gods, you know. Take a old 22 rifle and shoot game, you're gods, you know. Just so many things you could take, technologies, and they would look at you, especially back in the day, you know, primitive times. They would make, quote unquote, monuments to you. You would be their gods, and they would praise you and this and that. Of course, if you're going to be a god, you're going to kick them a few things every now and then. And then again, you're going to choose special people also, because they really like you. And if you reward them, you just created a government or a religious secular order. And they will worship you for hundreds and thousands of years.
Right. And they've been around for it's proof that the planet, there's proof that the planet is well over, millions of years old.
Oh, we already know how old the planet is, almost 5 billion years old, and things of that nature. And we have proof, technological proof, and archaeological digs and everything else, that there's technologies that has been frozen inside of lava, granite, and we've seen some of them. You do your research, you'll find it, that are 400 to 500,000 years old in coal deposits. How did that happen? And the thing about it is, this particular bell I'm talking about, the very top of it, the effigy or the little image up there comes looks almost exactly like some of the ones from the ancient Sumerian Babylonian cultures before them.
Hmm.
So, I mean, doesn't take a scientist, a rocket scientist, to figure out if they found this embedded in stone and coal and this and that, that it is as old as whatever that coal or that stone is.
Right.
And they found even electronic things, what looks like circuitry, spark plugs, screws, inside things that are, and you date that stone back. And this is something that's totally encased by the stone. Okay, so it's not somebody hollowing out a piece of stone and putting something in there and sealing it back up. You're going to see the drill hole just by the X-ray equipment and everything, MRIs and everything else we have. So this is encased back then when the stone was liquid form or whatever. So to encase these things, blah, blah, there you go. You measure the length of the dating of the stone, and you got it. And, we have to talk about that 7,000 year thing too. Where the Christians and everybody think, or, creationists think everything's only 7,000 years old. No, when the Bible talks about that 7,000 years, that was just a creation. Time went on after that. That's why we have the millions and millions of years and billions of years format. We're really, it doesn't, time as it is doesn't threaten, the aspect of that 7,000 year period of time. It actually says, yeah, that happened. And we're not saying what we thought were gods were basically beings, highly advanced beings that helped terraform a planet and seem to have had a hand in creating us.
Millions and millions and millions of years ago. And however many times, too, because we could
we've got so many inhabitable planets out there and galaxies and everything. It's innumerable.
Well, this kind of brings up the possibility, of them being ancient gods and things like that.
Sure,
now, one of the things that is talked about is about a war in heaven and a conflict.
I know pretty much.
That could easily be a war between ETs as well.
Well, I think that's exactly, and that's where you and I have talked about this several times before the interview. My idea of the war in heaven, and this is going to take planetary astrophysics and everything into account here, and everything. What we're looking at here, I believe, yes, there was a great war in heaven. They talk in all the great scriptures from the Hindu and the Indian text, to the, about the Vimanas and this and that, to the Christian text of great war in heaven, and the dark ones or evil ones or somebody falling to earth, and excuse me, and all this type of stuff, and a big battle going on and burning ships falling to the ground. You can look at many different of the ancient civilizations. I say look at India. I say look at the Christians. Look at all of them, and you'll see where they talk about this. Okay, so without a doubt, there was definitely some type of battle. Where I kind of be a little bit different on the thing about angels and everything. We've got to ask again who's angels, but that's another talk. You had two planets up there at one time that had civilizations on them, Mars and another one, Tiamat. Okay. Now, it doesn't matter if a big asteroid or comet or planetary thing hit him or whatever happened. Point is, we had these two civilizations. They're in orbit. Every planetary system or sun system or whatever has a Roche limit, meaning that nothing larger than, say, a medium-sized asteroid or something can survive. They get tore apart. And if you look at science and look at planetary systems and look up the Roche limit, then you'll understand what I'm talking about. So let's say that one of these planets was in that Roche limit, my belief, and it's going to get torn apart. You know what I mean? And they know this, so they migrate off that planet, and they might have had trade going with the inhabitants of Mars at the time or whatever. We don't know. We're just this is reaching out into history because we know that there were other planets out there, in the ancient histories of man, what they talk about. So you had one civilization possibly help move on to Mars, and part of them in the space and other planets around our solar system. And there's plenty of evidence that there's structures and other things on other planets within our system. We're not even going to argue that point. That's rhetoric if you're going to say there isn't. NASA and everybody else in the photographs of a lot of our probes and everything already proved it. So that's out. But anyway, they are in space. All of a sudden now we realize that this debris from these planets that were destroyed is going to come back around in orbit and bombard Mars too. So Mars is going, oh man, what are we going to do now? So they make deep underground civilization, on their planet like most of them did, I believe at that time. And look at the giant structures we have. We're seeing them repeated in other places too besides here. Meaning cis planets, it seems, from photographs and other evidence like that. So they're in space. Now, some of these beings, there's the Earth, jungles, forests, desert, everything we need, let's go there. And the other one said, no, because of the type of civilizations they were, we can't interfere. We can't do this. So there was a disagreement. So there was a battle in ensued because some were going to do it anyway, And so the battle ensued, and that's what our ancient books talk about, this great war in heaven between good and evil, because some wanted to leave us like we were to develop, and others said, listen, we just lost our worlds. We need a place to stay. Mm-hmm. So hence, I believe some of them came here and did stay. That's where some of these beings that we're running into are. They've been here a lot longer than we have because of two planetary systems, in which I believe had two life forms on them. They were intelligent enough to, for space travel and things of this nature. And some of them came here, but they had a battle doing it, And the ones that did come here got known as, the gods of the old scriptures and stuff of this nature. Mm. And notice that they were either insectoid or reptilian or very large humanoids. And there's a lot of facts out there. They're finding now the skeletons and stories of David and Goliath and all kinds of stuff.
So
it's a jump, but that's a possibility, on that war in heaven.
Yeah. So where are we now with all of this, and where do you think we're headed?
Where are we now? Same place, same station, same channel. Mm-hmm. I think we've come a long way in our personal development now, where we know we can see things. We got video cameras. We're realizing what's going on. So we ask the question now. Most of humanity now is asking the question of what we just discussed. Who are we? Where do we come from? Things of this nature. I think we really know that inside. That's why we keep looking to the stars. And a lot of us have that, come on, man. Come on down, get us. Or you feel home, you feel comfort there, looking at the stars. And our ancients tell us that's where we come from. That's what a lot of us feel inside, almost like we want to go back,
That's why we look up to God.
Yeah, well, the reason we look up to God is because the very beginning, these beings that came down, that's where they came from.
Right.
So that's where we look up, and we fail to realize that the real God, the Great Spirit and everything is all around us in all things. Mm-hmm. It's the life force, the chi, that intelligence, that being, that whatever it is that is in all things. And we call it God and other things, many different names. This energy, this force has. And the funny thing is everybody's trying to say that their way of saying it is right, when in reality they all need to step back and just look at it for what it really is.
Right.
So the gods we're talking about are these, that they're talking about in the old days, are basically, as far as I'm concerned, these ancient beings that come from somewhere else, come to our world. But as far now we know they're here. We've developed, and our governments have developed, reverse engineered a lot of things. And I do think that there is a sect or something that we're having a problem with. Maybe they're trying to tell the population to help the population. The government doesn't want them to, or vice versa. Try to harm us and everything. I mean, I have to leave that up to the individual researcher out there. I know what I personally feel. I personally feel if they're shooting at our nuclear weapons and turning things on and off, they're telling us of all the weapons that we have in our arsenals, those particular things. They're trying to tell us to get the heck away from the nuclear aspects of this. Let's get back to living like we were, where there weren't that many wars, and if they were on a level where it wasn't destroying the whole planet. I mean, that's very evident in the footage and things and military testimony that we received and everything like that. So I think we're
apparently it's
there. If
happened
they
before.
wanted to invade and take us over, that could have been done a long time ago. There's a larger purpose here. A larger purpose. And I believe it has to do with genetics and watching our society get to the point where we make the choice to take that next step of intelligence and the next classification of civilization or destroy ourselves. We're there. We're at that crossroads right now.
Right. Now, do you believe that we've destroyed ourselves before?
I believe that there has been civilizations, let's say, on this planet, simply because of the archaeological records and going back to what we said, people finding coal mines and found in rocks, electronics, seriously embedded in rocks, stuff of this nature. A lot of the evidence that goes back hundreds of thousands of years, millions of years, that's where we're at.
Yeah.
Just say your question one more time, because I want to go on another angle there.
Destroying ourselves before.
I think also spiritually here, we got to look at that. A society that's going to enhance itself technically has to balance its logic and its technology with its awareness and the understanding of their physical development too. You want to develop technologies that are going to be very beneficial to you, but not pollute at all in any way, shape, or form. Even in the manufacturing processes, you learn new manufacturing processes where you can do that. But at the same time, we have to develop ourselves to become more dedicated to the development of the species. You see what I'm saying? We have to put away a lot of the political rhetoric and bullshit, and programs of Republican and Democratic and all this type of stuff. We really have to put that stuff away, or we're going to destroy one another. Unfortunately, that's where that goes. We have racism. We've got a ways to go, and unfortunately, those who know what's going on and are up at the upper levels of the power structure use these same darn things generation after generation after generation. Prejudices, religions, cultures, and they turn everybody against one another because of that.
And that's all.
And they turn the upper class against the lower class, and the lower class against the upper class, because they have so many mechanisms that they can use that they can create dissension and hate. And that's what we look at. And they use the media very wisely at doing that. And that's a bad thing. Yeah. So we have a choice. We have to break away from the systems and things that we have right now that are in order, come up with new systems that work. Because for thousands of years we've had democratics, republics, this is and that's and dictatorships. None of them work. We have to have kind of a blend of some of them, and understand that, and we have to get out of this thing of rich and poor. We have to create a society now where everybody has your basics, education, medical, this, that. Don't call it socialism. Don't give it any of these stigmas. Advance in your mental thinking, and we can create better systems that aren't run by governments. If you let the private industries go crazy, you're going to develop a lot quicker than with government. Oh, you can't do this and can't do that and can't do that. They're hampering human development. Most governments are.
Okay. So, what kind of advice would you give to people that might be listening to this, maybe for the first time, really thinking about, UFOs and ETs, and what would you say to people that are just waking up to some of these things?
Well, I think the first thing I'd have to tell them is it's okay to know these things. It's not going to destroy who you are, what you are. It's going to enhance it. It's giving you a history to turn around and look at and say, wow, I'm part of something a lot bigger than just being ants on a marble. If we are truly genetically engineered, and have been part of a breeding program with extraterrestrials and this and that, many other things, that go on. Why is that a bad thing? You know, that could be very beneficial. It seems since we've evolved faster than anything else on this planet, that it's been a good thing. The only problem is we never looked, you know, hindsight's always 20/20.
Right.
We never really looked at the implications for every action has an opposite and equal reaction. We come up with dirty technologies, and we don't think about the dirt, we just throw it back in the environment, and that's where we're at right now. We've done a lot of things that's caused problems, and now we're to the point where we realize that, and we can fix some things, we can't fix some things. We come to that realization too. Some things we can fix, some things we can't. And it's okay if we're hybrids. And it's okay if fact is, all planets are made of stardust. Even if we came from this planet, we come from the stars.
Mm-hmm.
Facts. That's it, period. And if we're being enhanced by some species, great. Let it happen. Maybe it'll help us make us smarter. We're going to realize more and more of what we have done, come up with better and better ways of doing technologies to get our butts out of the problems and situations we're in now from using continually fossil fuels and things. And we are. Newer technologies are arising where we won't pollute the planet and things as much as we are right now. We got a lot of things to do. But telling everybody it's okay to wake up. It's okay not to be afraid. It's okay to realize that if we're hybrids, we're hybrids. That's just the way it is. You know, tigers don't know why they're tigers. They're just who they are and what they are. You know, dogs don't know why they're dogs. Us humans don't know exactly why we're humans. But now we have an idea where we come from, who we are, you know, basically in that sense. And what is our purpose here? Well, that purpose is up to us. What we want it to be. What we want ourselves and our societies to develop into being. You know, so that aspect of who we are, where do we come from, I believe that we already know that answer to. You know, and accepting that fact is okay too. You know, understand that, you know, our governments and religions are control structures for our bodies and our minds. And once we understand this and we kind of break away from that matrix, then we start to think clearly. Because a lot of things we told were taboo, we shouldn't look at, shouldn't talk about and everything, are realities. And there are other aspects of us that we all have to look at. And by looking at them, then we can become whole. And that's the most important thing right there. Don't fear the unknown. A lot of the unknowns you want to embrace and say, yeah, this is what we really need. I needed to know this. I want to know this. And I have to know this. So that would be my advice to them right there.
Well, this has been very informative, and thank you for the conversation.
Yeah, well, anytime we can help wake people up, that's the name of the game. And we'll have to get into some conversations about dimensional and time stuff, because it does have a lot to do with this right here. And with that said, I guess that's it for me. Do you have anything?
If anybody's interested in bringing up a topic or getting in touch with William Whitecrow, go to williamwhitecrow@yahoo.com or check out the website at williamwhitecrow.com.
Or they can get in contact with me on LinkedIn also and Facebook. And
bye.